Welcome back to Trauma, Drama, and Life. I'm your host, Ben Taylor.
And I'm your host, Kayla Taylor.
So we're excited to be back. If you have any specific questions that you want answered, please send them in to ben@rawmotivations.com. We'd love to be able to interact with you there. The topic that we're going to be talking about today is this idea, I titled it as like in sickness and in health, okay? Mm-hmm. And we were like debating as we were starting, I was like, what does that actually mean? Like, are we talking about the health of relationship or mental health or like when you're sick, when I'm sick, right? Yeah. Like all those different things. And so one of the things we actually wanted to bring to the table, I wanted to bring to the table of how narcissists are so amazing when they're sick. Like they're so loving, they're so kind. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
If you're watching this, then you know that I just rolled my eyes.
Right. So like an aspect about like how sickness actually happens, like what actually is going on when you're in a toxic relationship. I'll kind of start from like my perspective and then you can give some from your perspective as far as like what I see a lot of times and what I interact with people is, let's say toxic people in general typically go two different routes. Either one, you're just an inconvenience. Like, how dare you get sick? I have a life. Like, why in the world would you even get sick? Mm-hmm. Do you not understand how important I am? That kind of thing. And then two, like doting and trying to help the other person to then be able to flip it back on the person later. Be like, what's your problem? Don't you remember? I helped you when you were sick like 3 years ago. Like that kind of a thing. Yeah. So like either way, it's typically trying to leverage something to put that person in a place of like power, like a power dynamic, power control, or to be able to put a person in a place of like, it's all about me. Like, why are you even interacting with me? Why are you even messing with me? So, I'm sure neither one of those you've seen in our relationship over the years. No, we're full of jokes today, I guess. But yeah, so your perspective, let's talk about just like physically wise, like sickness in the relationship. What's that look like over the years with me?
Yeah, so I feel like when we were dating, anytime I would be like physically sick, you would obviously just, you'd jump at every opportunity to like, that would be like your love bombing, because you'd be like, how can I help? Can I bring you soup? Or can I like do whatever? Or anything like that. And so, and when we got married and like the shift switched and he started acting, obviously like his narcissistic side came out full blown. Right. It was more along the lines of like, you know, why are you sick? Like almost that aspect. Like he wouldn't actually come out and say that, but it was almost like he was saying, like, how dare you be sick? Like, right. Like,
didn't you see my schedule? You have to plan it.
Right. And like, yeah. Right. And so it's just, it's like, now, like, well, I guess like he would almost be like well, I guess I need to help you. Like, do you need anything? Like, but it wouldn't be in a caring way. It'd be kind of like, I could tell in his tone that he didn't care. And a lot of times I'd just be like, no, it's fine.
Which was kind of like training you not to ask for help. Because you're
right.
like, well, there's no point in asking. But then I could look like the good person. I'm like, well, I offered.
Yeah. And there's times now that when I get sick, I don't want to rest because of that mindset. Right. Because I wouldn't rest. I would just keep powering through. I'd still cook and clean and work at the time I worked. And so it was like just kept going on. And I think that I think the biggest thing and the biggest challenge was when I was pregnant with our daughter. And I had hyperemesis, and if you don't know what that is, it just means that you literally can't keep anything down during your pregnancy. Like I was on medicine and everything, and I couldn't even keep water down. And so I was basically like, I was physically at that point physically weak, and he would get frustrated because we worked together at the time. He'd get frustrated when I'd be like, I literally cannot get out of bed today. Like I can't come in for my shift. Like. And he was like, fine, I'll just like figure out something, or I guess I'll just like have to like stop what I'm doing and take your shift. Like it was like that undermining, and I like then I would feel awful, but at the end of the day, like I knew I couldn't get out of bed. Like if I went, I would probably literally pass out on the floor because I couldn't get up. And so at that point, like I just kept trying to push through, and like finally I got better. But I just remember that now, like, because now he actually tells me to rest, and I'm like, but like I have to do this, and he's like, no, like it's okay, like the house can wait, like your house, the house doesn't have to be immaculate, like, and so it's just. I did
that today, even before the podcast. I was like, we can do it tomorrow if you want, like you can actually rest, and you're like, no, let's do it, you know.
Yeah, and so it's like one of those things that's like in my mind, I have to retrain myself, and that's something that I'm having to still work on.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. With, I think I was going to ask, like, early on, so, like, dating, when I was, like, loving and doting and, like, helping, did it seem like that kind of, like, before marriage, but, like, we're just talking about in the dating phase, did it seem like it fizzled out? Like, say you were sick for, like, 2 weeks, you know, was I, like, loving and doting for, like, the first 3 days, or, like, was I still that way, like, 2 weeks later? I'm just curious.
I don't remember, because I don't necessarily remember, like, a ton of me being sick.
It was just like you'd get, like, the love bombing and all the
right.
affection.
Anytime that I would get sick, you would just, or I would be hesitant for us to spend time together. I'd be like, I don't really want to get you sick, and then you'd be like, oh, I don't care, like, it's fine. But then
when I would get sick.
Then when you would get sick, when dating, you weren't as bad. But I also don't know if, I mean, I do know that there is, like, such thing as, like, most men, I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, most men typically are weaker when they're sick. But I just think that
the man flu, right?
I think that narcissists just go to, like, a whole nother level, because then they're, like, blaming you because they got sick. So sometimes I think, jokingly still, he will still jokingly say, oh, well, you got me sick. And I'm like, you're fine.
Right. Right, just like we're working out today, and it's like, oh, this hurts, and she's like, you're fine, get over it. And I'm like, okay, no sympathy there. But
because I'm like lifting the same amount as you, and I'm like,
I was lifting the heavy ones. It's new. Anyways, off track. So, I forget where I was going with that. So there's, like, an aspect of, like, when I get sick, like, you said something one time. I don't remember the exact quote. I wish I did, but you said something. You were like, all men become narcissists when they get sick, because it's like the cold, the man flu of, like, they just become, like, wimpy, you know, cheap asses, and, like, feed me, and I'm dying.
He's like, he's got, like, a stuffy nose, and here I am, like, yeah, he has, like, a stuffy nose, and he's like, I can't get off the couch, I'm dying, and I'm, like, over here cleaning with, like,
right. Just, what was it? It was a couple weeks ago that I was, like, teasing you about it, actually, because you had, she had a really bad, like, earache infection.
Oh yeah,
right?
I had, like, a massive ear infection, like, inner and outer, like, it was bad.
And it was like guaranteed, like, within, like, less than a week, like, I feel something in my ear, and I'm like, you gave me an ear infection.
I was like, I cannot give you an ear infection.
She was like, it doesn't work that way. No, I was like, well, it's just, you know, narcissistic mind wanting to kick off to be able to say, like, like, this is happening. But yeah, no, I mean, it was,
and
like,
again, he was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. Nothing happened. A few ear pops, and we're back to normal. But yeah, like a lot of times you have, we just generalize, but, like, men in general, like, a lot of times you see, at least the trend sometimes out there of, like, the man flu of, like, everybody becomes like, you know, and that was definitely me. Like, whenever I was sick, like, I was, like, the victim, you know, every single time, like, I'm dying, and you'd be like, you know, get over it, you know. But there'd be, like, this aspect of it being dramatic, and I know there's been many times in our relationship that it's been correlated to when you got sick too, or around the same time, because obviously when you got sick, then the attention went off of me, and I was like, wait a second, like, I'm the most important, come back here, and, like, had to, like, shift the focus as quick as I could to, like, be back on me. Now, wasn't always necessarily conscious of, like, okay, need to get sick to shift focus, but it was just something that was, like, innate into, like, what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis of, like, okay, I'm not the center of attention anymore, like, what's up with that? That kind of thing. Yeah.
I remember it was very interesting because it just made me think whenever we found out that we had the C virus, I'm just going to abbreviate it just in case it, like, flags it.
C virus? Okay. I don't know.
Anyways, when we found out that we had that, like, our entire family got it, and Sophia was perfectly fine. And
we thought she got it, like, months beforehand, actually.
Right? Yeah, but she ended up not, I guess.
She just kicked it.
Yeah. But anyways, so we got it all around the same time, and we figured out that Ben got it, and then he passed it on to me and our daughter. And the only reason why that we found out we had it is because I lost my taste and smell, and he was still positive, but his positive was, like, very faint, like, it was, like, going out.
It was at the end of it.
Yes, because he was at the end of it. And I remember that I just got, like, super tired. That was really my only symptom. I lost my taste and smell and got super tired. And then he automatically was just like, oh, I'm so tired, I can't do anything. And I was just like, Dude, like, I literally can't keep, like, myself awake. You have to, like, take care of Sophia. I'm sorry, but you got to give me, like, at least 2 hours. You're fine. You are, like, almost over it.
Right.
But I just remember, like, it was just, like, an instant, like, oh, I have this thing. I need to, like... I was just like, okay, you're okay. You're okay. If it happens that you get worse again, then okay, but you're on the mend. And I think he even took a test like 2 days later, and it was like negative. Yeah. And mine was still blatant positive. So it's like, okay, you have no excuse anymore.
Right. But yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely like a trend that we see with toxic people is like the attention got off me. So now I have to get it back on me however possible. So my issue, my sickness is always bigger than your sickness. Yeah. And like the same thought process is like with a toxic person, like their emotional pain, their trauma, like all this stuff, it's always bigger, right? Like you're going through like something hard and heavy. Now mine's worse. Okay. Yeah. Like you lost a family member. Okay. Like I lost a paperclip. That means my pain is worse. Like that's really like I know that's like a silly example, but that's like the idea of like it has to trump what you and it has to trump what you're going through, so the attention gets back on me. Otherwise, it's like, wait a second, like the focus is on the wrong person. It should be on me. That's like how skewed up it is, I guess. To put it that way.
Yeah.
So I guess like that kind of covers one aspect, talking through this aspect of like the physical sickness and that aspect, and then moving into like relational like sickness and health, because you're like, what about that as well? So like in talking about that, I guess I should pass that off to you. I should let you take that. Like talking about like the like relational sickness and what you're in, like what type of relationship you're in. Like you can be in a healthy relationship, you can be in a sick relationship, and a lot of times people don't realize how the relationship sickens over time. Like it's not just like, oh, I'm going into this relationship because I noticed that it's toxic, it's abusive, and they're going to hate me within the first 3 months. Let me sign up for that. Like people don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like the slow thing of where you start losing different pieces. You know, like for instance, like you lose your taste of like, okay, now I don't have taste in people anymore because like they took that away. Like you lose like your sight to be able to see this is abusive. This isn't something I actually want to value. You lose your direction, your purpose, your equilibrium of what's actually going on. I don't know. I just made all that up, but I was like trying to like tie it into like it's the same aspect of like when you get sick, it's just a slow progression into hey, we had a healthy quote unquote relationship and now we don't. What happened? Well, like the sickness, you know, but like the toxic piece like slowly slides in.
And I feel like with that too, it's even more worse than being physically sick, because you also have like physical sickness that can come along with that if you've been in it for a while, and also like the mental aspect, like your mind is just like it can't even differentiate like right and wrong, or like discern like what is good or bad or anything. You just think everything is either bad or you think everything is good, and you don't realize that it's toxic, or you can kind of see some of the toxic pieces, but you're like, it's okay. You just make excuses up. Right. And that was like where I was just like, I can kind of see like where the toxic pieces were, but at the same time I was like, well, it's okay because, you know, like we're under a lot of stress, or I would just like excuse it, or it would be like, oh, he's just working a lot, or whatever it may be. And I would think that I would always just put something else like to blame for it, because I couldn't see past the blinders of like my skewed perspective that we were in a healthy relationship, because we weren't. And so I think now that our relationship is in health, like I oftentimes like I just look back and I'm like, how in the world did I even think that was like okay? Right. And it's just, in one sense, like you have to give yourself grace, because you have to realize you are not in a very good like mental space to be able to realize that you are like that your relationship was bad. And I think that's like the biggest part of working on yourself, to be able to have that perspective shift. Right.
No, that makes sense. What would you say, like, in that aspect of the relationship getting sick and then the relationship being bad and toxic, and you making up those stories about like, well, it's not that bad, it's because I'm working too hard, I'm tired, I'm sick, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like with those stories that you would create for yourself, what was necessarily my role in like putting those stories on you, and what might have been like your role in like how did you come to that conclusion of like, you know, it's something else than what it actually is. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think as far as you putting those things on me, it was more like you'd be like, well, you're not really like hanging out with my friends a lot, or you're not really like doing X, Y, and Z, or I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to get this project done, or I have to do this or whatever. And I just remember being like, okay, yeah, I mean, like, I know your end goal and all of this.
So just like the blame piece.
And so like, it would just be...
We're not connected because you're not hanging out with my friends.
Right.
Or like, I'm busy, but like you didn't do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Okay.
So you would always just like guilt trip me if I didn't want to do something with like your friends or whatever.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. I was just kind of curious like how that affected and how that like looked in those regards of you know, it's easy to be in the relationship and start to make up excuses and ideas and thoughts, and we normally term those as like stories or ideas. It's how we process, it's how we coach to try to be able to help people like understand them, but oftentimes those stories that we place upon ourselves end up holding us captive to that certain mantra, idea, thought process of like, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm experiencing, when in reality like it's not. Like, it's a completely different reality. We're just viewing it in a skewed version.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So,
and then I guess the last one would be, like, mental, but I guess that kind of just ties into...
Kind of ties in. But, I mean, it ties in with also the aspect of, like, mental health was affected, like, from my perspective, was affected by the lying, the gaslighting, the cheating, the emotional manipulation, like, all those pieces. And so, the healthy part, the health pill with that, you know, is really getting plugged into good quality therapy and like working through that like on your own, you know, like reading books, like focusing on like you, focusing on self-care, focusing on therapy, but then also focusing on like how are you actually applying and changing your thought process. And like back then obviously you didn't have like the tools that we have now of like rewiring your mind or like the story or like understanding what's real versus what's false. It was just kind of like figuring it out versus like what we try to help people now is like, hey, go through this process, like understand what's the actual truth of the situation. But yeah, I would say like therapy is a huge piece that we don't talk about.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think now like in health we definitely do all of those things like like when we're physically sick or if our relationship is not well, which it's not, I shouldn't say sick, but obviously you're gonna like have disagreements and things like that. So when there's a rift in your relationship or when like mentally somebody is like, you know, having like a ton of stuff going on, then I think that we do like a lot better. And he especially does a lot better of being there for me.
Right.
With especially just like the last few months I've battled like a lot of things mentally, and so he's been there and trying to not help me to not be so pessimistic.
Right.
And
I mean, it's just been a lot of stuff like going through that we haven't really talked about even on the podcast. But like,
I mean, we can talk about that sometime in the next
just weeks, life and thing that's happened and just like perspective. And I think I mean, for me personally, like one of the things I think is cool just in talking about sickness and health is like you kind of mentioned, like with being sick, with struggling with, you know, relationship and all those things, like it's really cool to interact and see now that, you know, you're able to take those times and take those moments and not feel the pressure from me or sometimes you feel the pressure, but it's not from me, it's from like the past. And then I'm like, so no, it's still okay.
Having to,
There's like that process.
Yeah. Cause it's still like a process when you're just used to something for like a certain amount of time and all of that, then it's just hard to rewire things. And sometimes like you can work to rewire as much as you can, which we have, but then when things come up, like when I am sick or when something that is really hard for me to like handle or something like that has come up, then it's like, okay, like it's in those moments, that's when I have to start working on rewiring and just being extra communicating of like, okay, like this is how I feel right now. Like I know I probably shouldn't feel that way, and I know that you probably want me to rest, but I feel like I shouldn't rest, and I feel like I need to get X, Y, and Z done. And he's like, just take a breath. Like he's like, it's okay. So I mean, that's definitely like something that he has grown in, and I am still working on being able to work through that and being okay with the idea of rest.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I guess I'll finish with like the disclaimers, because people look at our relationship and be like, wait, what about my narcissist? Maybe they can do that. So really quick, if you're with a toxic person, a narcissist, and one, you're not sure what to do, reach out for help. We'd love to be able to help you work through that. Then number two, if you're looking at us and being like, wait a second, he's a narcissist, he's changed, maybe mine can change. If you're not seeing honesty, vulnerability, and consistent change, then you need to leave. So we're pretty clear about that in multiple podcasts, but I wanted to kind of throw that in here just to make sure people know.
I think we've had a couple of our first podcasts. We talked about our relationship. So go back and listen to those, because we give a lot of disclaimers. Right.
So just wanted to throw that out there real quick. If there's a specific topic or idea or thought that you want to be able to hear us talk about, or a question that you have dealing with both of us, would love to be able to interact with you. Just email at ben@rawmotivations.com. We'll bring it up, dive into it on the podcast. But otherwise, until next time, thank you guys.
Thanks.